Is there so much suffering in this world?
After that, I got diagnosed with colon cancer. What was I going through?
Yeah.
A lot of confusion. Did he do that? Could he have stopped it?
He allowed it. How am I supposed to trust this being that's gonna smite me at any point? Thank you so much, Pastor Steve, for being here. This is Steve Kim, our guest today, and he is the pastor of Rain City Church and the founder here in East Van, right? I'm excited today because I get to learn, along with the viewers, about a hotly debated topic for decades, and it's the topic of suffering. And at some point in everyone's life, everyone's asked this question. I, as an atheist, kind of a non-believer, asked this question many times, and then when I came into Christianity very recently, I asked it still, and I actually think it's more important for like Christians, new Christians, and even old Christians, because I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I belonged to a church for 10 years when I was practically a non-believer. I went because my cousins went. It was a family thing, and then you'd go to dim sum after, right? It was very social. So I realized that it's a really important question to ask, but nobody actually ever answered it. And a lot of people I asked kind of swept it under the rug, like under the guise of God's mysterious and things like that. And I found it, without settling this question, I found it difficult to have faith in him, to know who he is, and to have trust in him. People say, well, trust him. And my viewpoint was, well, how am I supposed to trust this being that's gonna smite me at any point? Like I don't know how to trust or even have a relationship with a God like that. So let's get into it. Why, Steve, is there so much suffering in this world when there is a good God who's supposed to be all loving, who's all powerful, and who cares about all of us?
Well, that's a big topic.
Yeah. So
I'm an academic, but not in theology. I have a master's in theology, divinity.
Right.
But I'm also a professor of leadership.
Yeah.
So just up front when
Yeah.
I'm talking, I'm not gonna give you these short
No,
padded
don't give
answers.
us. Yeah, we want all of it.
My brain is thinking this way because I'm more of an academic that way.
Yeah, that's fine.
So it is a mystery. But I think there can be answers that bring more clarity and peace to you.
Okay, so what are they?
Well, I want to just make sure that people understand. I'm not devoid of suffering myself. I think I've gone through a lot of trials since 2014.
Yeah.
Up until 2014, my life has been like, people used to call me the golden child. Everything seemed to work out right for me. I married like the princess of the city of London, Ontario.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of favor in ministry internationally. Church grew in size. I get offered jobs. I really never had to interview for a job. Well, I did interview, but it was a formality because they asked me to be full-time faculty at the university. Like I wasn't seeking that job.
So your life has been charmed up till 2014.
And then some things happened in my church that I was out of the blue, that was extraordinary. I thought, this probably is one of the worst things that ever happened. But that's just ministry. Things happen, and people are people. Our church was pretty big, so weird things are bound to happen.
Yeah. Politics to get
suffering,
in there, sort of, yeah.
People got hurt and all of that. And so, but then my father died of cancer, 2019. He got diagnosed, and within 3 months he passed away. That was pretty shocking to me. Because he was such a strong man.
Was he anything like you?
Yeah, he was 2 degrees down from being a 1-star general, brigadier general in the Air Force. So he's high ranking, like a colonel.
Very strong personality.
3-star rose colonel, like high ranking. He brought computer systems to the Korean Air Force, so he's pretty famous. So he's smart. He graduated from one of the best universities in Korea. His classmate was one of the presidents.
Well, what did you think when you first, this is your first bout of suffering, right?
Well, I thought, well, it's kind of like anything in life. You kind of buck it up I mean, you kind of like roll up your sleeves and get to work, because I'm an athlete, so I'm just resilient.
But emotionally and mentally, you must have thought, I mean, at this point...
Well, it causes trauma.
Yeah.
So trauma is the feeling like, oh, my life is not charmed.
Yeah.
Things can happen to me. And now fear, then you start to fear. And then fear precipitates into control. Then you start to want to control your life. Then you start getting ultra healthy.
Right.
I'm for health. I'm very healthy.
Yeah.
But then you start getting controlling about your life, and then you fear suffering.
Yeah.
You fear death, and then ultimately death. Because suffering is a precursor to death.
Or a loss of loved ones, like you went through.
I didn't really have a loss for my father in the sense. I grieve the fact that I'll miss him enjoying my children, but he will never miss that in heaven.
Yeah.
And I actually had perfect peace that he's not thinking about me in heaven. And I will be reunited with him, because in terms of eternity, like I'm 53, so maybe 40 years if I'm blessed, or even less. That's a very short time. Time flies by so fast. I'll meet him again.
Yeah.
I'll just miss him for that time, but we'll be together for eternity. So I wasn't really grieving in that sense. I feared suffering.
Because you saw him go through it?
Yeah, I don't want that to happen to me.
Right.
I'd rather die in a plane crash than go through that.
Yeah.
So I don't want... See, I'm like a little bit of a wimp.
Yeah.
We
all are. I'm the same way.
If I get shot, that's why that's why I can go to North Korea or like Africa and take these crazy planes, and then if I die on the plane, and
then you die.
You die. It's fine.
Yeah.
But the suffering part is what people try to avoid, and we try to control.
Yes.
Then, so my father died, and then I thought that was it. So back to back things happened, and I thought, well, I'm going to get back to normalcy, and I'm going to get back into that favor mode.
Yeah.
Then my daughter got diagnosed with a brain tumor.
Oh my goodness.
2022. And they said it was cancerous, and it was dire. So you had to have a major operation.
Throughout all this time, where was God in it? Did you blame him? Did you talk to him? Did you ask him for help? Or did you just think, I'm going to control this on my own?
Yeah, so, and then after that, I got diagnosed with colon cancer.
Within like a few years, right?
So it's back to back to back to back. So I think I know suffering to some degree. What was I going through?
Yeah.
A lot of confusion.
Did it sway your faith at all? Like,
no.
What's happened? Really? You didn't blame him and go, God, why is this?
No, because I know how this works.
Okay.
Because in this world, you will have trouble, Jesus said. And Jesus died on the cross, and through such an excruciating, that's where the word excruciating comes from, the cross. Because the pain that he suffered, he's not going to escape that, and we can't escape suffering.
Right.
That's just part of living in this planet.
Why do you say that, of living on this planet? I mean, if I was a god, I'm not, but if I was a god and I was to create this earth, why not make it perfect?
He did create it perfect. He's not the one that brought evil and suffering into the world. We did. So the Genesis narrative, people like look at that as a historical narrative, like there was this Adam and Eve sat in front of God, and then they chose this tree of like knowledge of good, which is actually a symbol of independence and control. So
the tree of knowledge is.
Yeah, so it's like living without God. Like I want to live on my own, and then that extrapolated into the Tower of Babel, which is people saying we can do all these things without you. Rather than submitting to the Creator, they wanted to be the Creator.
But let's not. There's an antagonist here too, right? The snake and all of that.
Yeah, but those are all symbolisms. Genesis is a narrative. Moses wrote Genesis as a symbolic, like a narrative, so that people of all time will understand and extract truth from that passage that we would all understand.
Are you saying that Adam and Eve wasn't real people? What do you mean by narrative?
Well, it alludes to Genesis 1. It says, like when God created man, that word man is Adamah, which is humanity.
Okay.
And then Genesis 2 extrapolates on what's happening to humanity. But we need to understand that God is sharing us, giving us a narrative. It's not a scientific document. It's a narrative to tell us exactly what went wrong in this planet.
Right.
So basically God is saying humanity rebelled against God. and there was this progenitor, which is Adam,
Okay.
and there was a man.
So Adam is real, right?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a person
So there's a person,
that
Adam and
represented
Eve.
humanity, or
Sure.
Eve. It could be those two, but
Okay.
they rebelled against the Creator, and then that put a fissure into.
The relationship.
They separated themselves from the protection of God. They said, "We no longer want to be with you."
But then why are we having to pay like thousands of years ago from our ancestors and what they did? Why isn't it like devoid of suffering now? Why didn't he create,
Because that sin nature is passed on from generation to generation. We all have it. Like if you have children, you'll know it right away.
What do you mean?
Every child is born with a sin nature to want to be independent, demand what they want, entitlement, and then we raise them up to kind of curtail that to a certain degree. But I coach adults, I coach CEOs, I coach leaders.
Yeah, and isn't independence good? I mean, you think of a CEO as independent. That's
Ultimately,
sinful.
every sin that we commit
Okay.
is rooted in independence.
Give me an example.
Let's say a guy is like going and deciding, I'm going to go and sleep with a prostitute.
Right.
Well, how is he working that in his mind? Let's say he's married.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he's looking out for what? His own desires and his own
Right.
wants, despite what the ripple effect is going to cause his family. But then the only thing that restraining him is like the consequences of that, and then maybe if there's laws against prostitution
Right.
in the city. But history tells us that when there are no laws and there's no restraint,
crazy.
people, it's called barbarism. So history goes through stages like barbaric,
Yep.
barbarism, where people are just doing whatever they want.
Yeah.
It's basically
A
anarchy.
zoo. Yeah. Like chaos.
It's like when there's riots in the city, it's because they think there's no police. So you got school teachers going into stores and stealing jeans.
Right. But God created us with free will, right? He
Yeah,
gave
but
us
then there
free
was no
will.
sin nature. Once we chose that nature entered into our.
So you're saying Adam and Eve weren't born with a sin nature. They were all perfect. Everything was
perfect.
okay. And then would you say that it was a choice made by Adam and Eve, or would you say that, the snake, Satan, our enemy?
Satan cannot make choices for us. He just tempts us.
So they were tempted and they took the bait.
Yeah, and then they submitted under the rule of Satan because they submitted into his truth or his deception.
So you're saying suffering started all the way back in Genesis and
So
is now
if you look
us.
at the earth like this,
Yeah.
this is heaven,
Yeah,
where God dwells.
sure.
This is earth, and then right in the middle, like it's like a Venn diagram. There's Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, and then these two things are merging. It's perfect. Nothing is
Heaven
wrong.
and earth.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so God told Adam and Eve to make earth like heaven. You're going to be the regents of this planet. I'm the king
Yes.
and you're the regents. And so go and make, that's the work.
Yeah, you
Go
have
ma-
dominion over
Yeah,
all the
make
creatures
heaven.
of the
There's
sea.
nothing to worry about. I'm with you.
Right.
But then when Adam and Eve sinned, he separated himself. Because God cannot be in sin. God is perfect. That's like telling somebody to drink toilet water. It looks pure, but then there's impurities everywhere. That's like oil and water mixing together. It's not that God is rejecting that. He cannot be. There is no possible way that God can be in any part of sin because he's perfectly holy. So there was a separation. That's why there's a separation.
Between
Okay.
heaven and earth
Yeah,
now.
Garden of Eden and earth. And then there was a separation. You cannot enter anymore. And now you're on your own. And then on their own, you can see, but then God in his mercy started like trying to recreate that because he had a plan.
Are you talking about Jesus?
Yeah, well, all the Old Testament, all the failures of leadership, but God was with them. He chose a nation. He chose Noah, Abraham, and then he chose David, and he
The Jews. Sure.
chose it. And then through that line, Jesus will come, and then through the cross, there will be a connection again.
Right.
He was creating that Garden of Eden again
So
through Jesus. And then now it's our job to like squeeze out sin from the world. So see that there's sin in the heaven, earth, Adam and Eve, all that line, there's sin,
Yeah.
polluted. God cannot be there. So when Jesus came, he's recreating that Garden of Eden. He's the new Adam.
Interesting.
And then he's calling us to be
Like him.
his offspring.
Right.
And to be the future, like Israel. Go and redeem the land. And so that's why Revelation ends with a new heaven and a new earth.
Yeah.
And so as we bring, that's why Jesus prayed, let your kingdom come, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Yeah.
So
I wondered what that meant.
we are trying to bring heaven,
On earth.
and then so heaven is encroaching upon earth, and as it does, sin starts to get, it's like a big zit, it starts to get squeezed out.
So then
And then at the end, it'll be heaven and earth
together,
which was the original plan in the first place.
So let me ask you this, since we are bring kingdom on earth, his kingdom in heaven as it is on earth, does that then make us immune to suffering?
No, so it's the here, we in theology we call it the here, but not yet. Because the consummation of all these things like heaven and earth becoming one, a new heaven and a new earth, and God creating everything anew, like he originally planned. So God never forgets his plan, his promises. That's one thing that we know when we read the Bible. Everything he said is going to happen. It's just maybe not in the way we thought.
I see.
And then so it's going to happen in perfection, but we're attaining to perfection. So during that time, there's a
Like a weird
oscillation between
back
two
and
worlds.
forth.
Yes. We'll see evil and we'll see goodness. We'll see heaven and we'll see hell. So when you live on this earth, you see both.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why we pray for
The
healing.
beauty and the ugly. Yeah.
That's why we pray for healing. Because we want to remind people
The kingdom of heaven.
that the kingdom of heaven is real. That the kingdom of God is real, and then the promises of God for a new heaven and a new earth is going to be realized, maybe not in our lifetime, but in our eternal state.
That's a very theological standpoint, and that's great. But if, so let's go through a scenario. I lost somebody very dear for me, and now I'm suffering. Why is it in most people, I know you didn't go through this, but for me, I blamed him for everything because I thought, well, if you're so powerful and you love me, you wouldn't let this happen to me. Do you think, and I think I got that from the book of Job, which I also wanted to discuss, because in the book of Job, it sounds like he allows it. And there's that saying from, 10 years of church, there's that saying I caught where they say, well, God allows it to happen so that he, you come back to him or whatever, like in his perfect plan.
Okay, so let me stop you there.
Yeah.
So what kind of church did you go to? What was the denomination?
I don't know the denomination, unfortunately.
Was it a conservative Chinese church?
It was a very conservative church. There was no laying of hands. There was no speaking of tongues. There was none of that.
Well, it doesn't matter if you're a Pentecostal or charismatic.
Yeah.
You can be rooted in this predeterminist idea of God.
Right.
That God predetermines everything.
Yes.
And then you're getting very close to deism. Deism is that God winds up the clock, and let me say, not getting close to, but you're encroaching upon becoming almost agnostic or ascribing to a deistic idea, which is like, you know what? I still believe there's God, but he's not good for me. He doesn't care about me. I'm just going to live my own life.
Yeah.
Which is practical atheism. So a lot of people are losing faith because of that idea. It starts from I would say, kind of the brainwashing with people who are sincere, because I'm also ordained Presbyterian and have like this Reformed theology badge on me. I'm supposed to be conservative. But after having studied and being Christian for since I was 13, so almost 40 years.
Wow.
And I graduated seminary
you're 50-something?
I'm 53, 24, so 30 years of ministry.
Oh my goodness. I thought you were like late 30s, early 40s.
No,
I had no idea. You look great.
My kids are 26 and 23.
Yeah, so I kind of figured maybe they had it early.
Not that early, no. So I would say I don't ascribe to the idea that God like predetermines everything.
Yeah.
Because it's really, I can recommend some theologians who are way better at explaining this than I am. So not to get too heady, so a lot of people look at the world like dominoes.
Yeah, sure.
So it's like
One thing happens, it's a
one
ripple
thing,
effect.
the ripple effect.
Yeah.
So that's a very shallow understanding of how God works. And his mind is not that shallow.
Okay.
Because so it's more like a,
So you don't agree with the God allows suffering in order to bring people closer to him? Because I think that's kind of a cruel idea. If I imagine having children one day and I think oh, they're going to move out.
You should never ascribe to God an evil.
Like in the same...
God is not the originator of any evil.
Yeah.
And is not a proponent of evil. He actually wants to eradicate evil. And sin is a big word. And it's like, I think of it like pollution.
Like
so if you swim in the polluted waters, you're going to get sick.
Yeah.
So we're living in a polluted world. We're all going to decay. We're all dying. That is our destiny. To want to avoid that and live forever, you're foolish.
Yeah.
But there's things that happen. Like, why did I get stage 1? It was stage 1, so thank God.
Thank God.
But why did I get that? Probably because of my diet in my 20s and probably like a lot of drinking, a lot of alcohol, a lot of Chinese food and spam, like lots of things that I did.
I love all those.
I did a lot of those things and it caught up to me, most likely, even though I try to be really healthy in my 40s. But God protected me because it's not my time yet. But did he do that? No, he did not.
Would you say that?
Did he cause that in me? No.
But the question of Job is, it's not that he caused it maybe, but some would say he allowed it, and that's sort of the same thing, because he kind of, Satan goes up to the heavenly realms, and then he kind of says, hey, and then he says, hey, well...
Job is not a historical book.
Okay, tell us about that, because I've been taking it literally, so...
If you read Job, a lot of theologians have trouble with it because how could Satan, it's not the story, it's like, how could Satan be in the presence of God?
I thought that too. I'm like, what, is he just allowed to go up and down?
Also, you got to understand the Bible. Bible has 66 books with all different genres.
What do you mean genres?
So there's poetry, like Psalms. There's wisdom literature, like Proverbs.
Sure.
But Job is included in the wisdom literature. Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. Those are all 3 wisdom literature. There's historical narratives. There's the prophets. There's also the Genesis story, a narrative. There's the biographies of Jesus. There's the letters of Paul. And then there's the apocalyptic letter of Revelation. We got so many different... You don't read everything with the same lens. You read it according to its genre. So when I read Job... So I said, what kind of genre is it? Proverbs is just sayings. It's like wisdom sayings. It's like chicken soup for your soul at chapters. You just read it and you take it in.
Yeah.
Ecclesiastes is what Solomon wrote, and it's using Solomon's lament and his
life.
Yeah, his life and his apostasy, actually turning away from God, because he just couldn't, he just thought this is all meaningless. And then Job comes in at the end. So you have to read all 3 as a set. Proverbs is like linear. It's like dominoes. Well, if I do this, if I work hard, I'm going to get blessed.
A lot of promises and conditional things.
Don't do this, don't do that.
Yeah.
Marry a good woman.
You're going to die if you do this.
Yeah, if you don't work, you're going to not eat. It's just basic, simple sayings. But then there's also the mystery part.
What's the mystery part?
Ecclesiastes. Life is meaningless. What's going on here? I don't understand. I did everything that Proverbs told me, but then my kid got cancer. I got cancer. I did everything right. What's happening?
Yeah.
So that's meaninglessness. And then if you stop that meaninglessness, you go into apostasy, which is rejecting God. Ultimately, that is the path you're on. So
I went through that.
Yeah, but then you forgot the last part, which is Job. Job is a book that concludes everything. There's you try to control God. You find out in this world things are not as calculating as you thought.
Yes.
And then Job comes in, and then ultimately Job is the play on all 3. Job is the ultimate proverbial man. He did everything right. But then he goes through meaninglessness, what's going on? He lost everything. And then at the end he gets blessed. Double portion.
Double.
Yes.
He got double of everything,
in this life and the next. And so the Lord is saying, that's life. That is our life on this planet. And Job I actually think if you read it carefully, it's more like a play. It may be based on a person. Somebody observed the person named Job and said, wrote a play. If you look at it as a genre, read it again, and you're like, oh. And then compare it to Shakespeare.
Right.
And then you do a juxtaposition. I did this in high school, actually, like King Lear and Job.
Yeah.
It looks almost exactly the same. Almost like Shakespeare plagiarized Job.
Yeah.
But then the only difference is Shakespeare is a tragedy because it ends with tragedy.
Yeah.
But Job doesn't end with tragedy because our life is a triumph. We always triumph. That's the promise of God. So that in those two proverbs, that you can probably encapsulate people's lives.
You said something just now. You said, in this life and the next. A lot of people think, well, do not store treasures on earth, store treasures in heaven. A lot of people are thinking it's okay to suffer until the end of your life, and then I'll get to heaven and there'll be, whatever you want. But until heaven comes, you're going to suffer, like, till the end. But you're saying on this earth as well that, is that then a promise? Do we take the book of Job as a promise that wherever you are and you're suffering right now, that God's going to double your portion? Can we take that from the book of Job?
I believe that there's redemption in this life and the next. See, for me, one of the reasons that I have hope, and don't get me wrong, it's not like I was this robot and stoic and nothing affected me. Yeah, of course, I have emotions. I'm a human being. But ultimately, every single day, I had faith in God. I had hope in Him. Because in this life and the next, everything will be redeemed. That is the promise of Jesus, the cross and the resurrection. We forget the resurrection. We all go through a cross. But the resurrection is God's doing. He will always resurrect our lives.
Yep.
So that's why we are Christians, because we hope for the resurrection in this life and the next. And the next life will be great, so much greater than this life, because I believe in heaven.
Yes.
And so, only fear I had when maybe this is it for me. I got a time for me to go.
Yeah.
Only fear I had was I was going to take care of my family. But then I have to trust God in that too. Because when I'm in heaven, I'm not going to be thinking about them.
Yeah. This is an aside, but do you think you'll be able to see, do the dead that are in heaven, do you think they can see their children,
or
their grandchildren?
They said that they are witnesses as we run the race. Mostly, I think I'm going to be in a state of complete bliss.
Yeah.
And joy and happiness. And I've never felt, when my father died, it's almost like he saw Jesus, because his face was completely devoid of any anxiety, any stress.
Yeah.
He looked completely different. He looked very peaceful.
I heard of that, actually. I have a nurse friend who says that a lot of Christians who pass, they look up and they're kind of smiling almost.
Yeah, he looked very peaceful.
Yes.
Because he's a very serious guy. Always worried and anxious about a lot of things. But I said, good, Dad, now you're at real rest and
real peace.
And you're enjoying the heck out of heaven, so enjoy yourself. I'll see you again.
Yeah. And that's a good mindset to have, because a lot of people,
I just mean, we grieve,
right?
we grieve, the Bible says, with the heavenly perspective. Yeah. We don't grieve with the worldly sorrow. Worldly sorrow is that's it.
That's a fine line, because grief can take you, it can snowball. I've gone through it before to the point of depression.
We grieve because we'll miss them.
Yeah, it's your loss. That's what people say.
But we don't grieve
we'll never see them again.
This is it.
Yeah, it's not the end. Let's get back to Job. I just want to clarify a little bit, because you kind of talked about it a little bit, how you said it was like a play. It might be based on a person, but it's
most
to
likely,
be taken as
most likely a person.
A play, yeah.
Inspired by.
But that's a very interesting, because I've never heard that theology before. We were always to take it very literally, so a lot of people kind of...
It's without that, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And really, you cannot have Satan and God negotiating.
So I want to focus in on this point where they have a conversation, and I think that's where I myself anyways, as a young Christian, got the idea that God allowed my suffering and was just kind of sitting on his hands, looking at me, going through all this, was because of that conversation with Satan where he said, okay.
So he's like saying, okay, let this happen to him.
Let this happen. Okay, you can do whatever, right? Like, yeah, take him
like
or
Job
whatever.
is like a guinea pig or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. And it's kind of cruel. But he kind of puts, and it also gives you a feeling that he can control Satan, where he says, like, but don't take his life. So this is as far as you can go. So, like, God has Satan on a leash, but he's kind of allowing, so if you see
it as a play,
yeah.
it's the preamble, it's set up to the story.
Yeah.
There's the middle. The whole middle is just him talking with his friends.
Yeah.
And then God shows up.
Yeah. And says, you don't know what anyone's talking about.
So there's 3 parts.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know where the city is.
No.
We don't know where is this place.
Like a land of Uz.
I mean, we could probably figure it out, but it's very nebulous. And then the whole scenery is like there's no scenery to it. It's just them talking.
Well, so do you believe
on a stage?
That?
Like, if you just imagine it on the stage.
I can imagine it.
They're just talking.
It's like once you said that, the play, I can't imagine it any other way now.
It's a dialogue.
Like that's, yeah.
And then the conclusion is God's like, who are you?
Who are
I'm
you
God.
to ask me? But that doesn't even answer the question, right? And I guess he doesn't have to answer to us. But
basically he's saying, ultimately this life is about trusting the goodness of God.
So you don't believe in that conversation where he allowed it to happen. Like, here's my kid, beat him up, but just don't kill him.
It's probably like a microcosm of how people may have viewed it in that historical context, in that environment. Like, a lot of people also talk about the Old Testament. People are like, how can we believe in a God that tells people to like go loot villages and because they're reading it. We call that in theology like eisegeting. We just extract something, and we're not reading it in context, and we're also not reading it. We're trying to read it in our context.
So what context should we view that conversation?
So if you were, Janice, in that world where you have your family, and people are coming and raping your daughters and killing you and killing your babies,
I would fight tooth and nail.
Yeah, because and then your existence and your survival depended on the salvation of the whole world, because through your line, through the Jewish line, salvation, Jesus will come. If you knew that, would you be like, peace be with you, turn the other cheek?
No, I would get really violent at like 5'4".
Yeah, because that's the context. They're living in a barbaric world where they had to protect themselves. It's just the way they thought, even the way they heard God, like, should we do it or should we not? They just cast lots.
What do you
mean? It wasn't like they just heard God audibly.
Oh, they just like a throw of a dice.
Yeah, and then they just thought, it's Urim and the Turim. Throw it, and then it turns a certain way, and they're like, okay, let's do it.
So wait, that's the context we should.
And then they had obviously they had the prophets who actually heard divinely,
right?
And the kings that relied on the prophets, and then we have foreshadowing of the New Testament where King David entered into the presence of God themselves. But I'm saying, like, there's all these factors involved in the way they viewed God, how they operated God, because they were progressively becoming more knowledgeable who God was. And then we get to the New Testament. That's why do you think there's 400-year gap between Malachi and the time of Jesus? Because the Roman Empire had to create some semblance of civilization, order, laws. Even though it was still barbaric in some ways, the way we view it, but it was a lot more organized and orderly. And there was this thing called the Roman Empire that ruled the whole entire world.
Yeah, like governed.
Yeah, governed, so where we can fear of like this barbaric attacks, like Assyrians and Philistines coming and just destroying us.
So you're saying
there were some protections there, so we call that the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. And then Jesus comes into that culture, and then he starts talking about peace, his peace.
Right.
So everything is like progressive. There's a greater progressive understanding of who God is. So the way that the people in the Bible understood him progressed.
So you're saying when they were writing the book of Job, and I think someone told me it was one of the very first books written, I don't know if that's true, but you're saying that their view, when they're writing it, their context and their viewpoint of God was this way, but it's not necessarily, because you're saying that it's kind of written sort of in a play, so no one can really
I have to
witness.
go to a more deeper I haven't done a deep dive into Job lately, but
That makes sense, though. So the context of the writer is a little bit different.
But theologically, like there's nuances there. So we just don't read it like literally.
Yeah, because that's what I've been doing, and it's problematic that way, right?
If you read it like that, then you're going to think that way.
That's a very interesting viewpoint. I've never heard that before.
For me, a lot of people disagree with me, but a lot of theologians agree with me.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of smart people on my side.
Yeah.
I have some favorite ones I can name off, but what I'm trying to say is read the Bible in its context.
Yes.
And what they thought, how did they view? Like this Old Testament survey course I took, and I thought it was really boring, but now it's probably one of the most beneficial courses I took, because I had to understand the context and the culture and what people are surrounding them believed.
Yeah.
So that we understand, like when they were writing, what were they thinking? What was happening?
Yes.
And God is using all of that to create his own narrative.
Yeah.
Like when you look at Abraham and Isaac, and God telling Abraham to go kill your son, that's horrific.
Yes.
But if you read it in our context, that is, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah.
And then people are stupid enough to think like, oh, if God tells me to kill my son, I'll kill my son.
Yeah, yeah.
Even though the Bible says, thou shalt not murder.
Yeah, that's right.
So we look at that, and then we understand, in that culture, Abraham was creating this new faith, new nation. And then Abraham was beginning to understand who God was, and he was a man of faith. But he knew that God was different than the God of the Chaldeans and what his fathers worshipped. He knew instinctively there was something different, because Hebrews 11 tells us, even if I killed Isaac, I know that God will bring Isaac back from the dead. So in his heart, he knew that there's goodness in God, something he will redeem. So hold on. God called him to do that because he wanted to show him something. Look at every other god that you worship and every other god surrounding you demand the firstborn. He's like testing his faith. So it's not testing of faith like kill your son. What kind of God do you think I am? So he carries him up to the mountain. The mountain most people believe where Jesus died on. And he carries Isaac, his firstborn, and he's about to kill him, sacrifice him to God, to offer to God, and God says, don't do that. And then he offers a ram on the sacrificial animal was coming up on the other side where we couldn't see. And he was caught in a thicket of like thorns. So the ram is a sacrificial sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus, caught in the thicket of thorns, who had the crown of thorns. And God is saying, see, you know how you felt when you carried Isaac? I am going to do that to my own son.
Oh my goodness.
For the sins of all humankind. I am not like any other God. I don't demand your firstborn. I give you my firstborn. That's
so funny that you bring that up, because that was a question that I had, because I forgot the names. I was like, that guy who, almost killed his son. And that seems cruel from my point of view, because I thought, wow, like you made him go through all that. But when you were saying that just now and it shifted, like it's still, the events are what the events are, but when you shifted the narrative like that, and then I thought, wow, so we should always read the Bible with that lens of who is God.
You don't read it from your lens. I would never do that.
Yeah.
That's actually what we call anthropomorphizing God. We're making God into our likeness.
Yes.
So we read the Bible according to that context. That we have to know what Abraham was thinking. Mm-hmm. Abraham thought, this is normal. He probably expected it. Every God that he knows demands a first son. So he said, I'm ready. Even though, it took me a long time to get this one. Yeah. But that's the God I worship. That's what Hebrews 11 said. He's the father of faith, because somehow he believed, no, I didn't go through all this. And he's going to kill me.
Trust.
He just knew, I'm going to kill him. He's going to slice him up. But then God's going to bring him back together again. He had this weird, convoluted belief, but he was syncretized with his idea of who God was. God wanted to completely extricate his old ideas of who God was, who other gods are.
Yeah.
And he's saying, I am completely different, Abraham.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't need your son.
That is so helpful, Steve. For me personally, I don't know about the viewers out there probably too, but that context shift, just now, wow, that was like a
People gotta read the
revelation.
Bible
It's amazing.
differently.
Yeah, exactly. Well, clearly how I've been reading it has not been working. I have a last question before we wrap up, and I just want to read in John 10:10, "The thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy, and I have come that they may have life and that they might have it more abundantly." So Satan has been kind of in the background, and nobody thinks twice about him. Where I come from is a land of voodoo and black magic, and we think about him all the time. And he was in the book of Job. He was in Genesis as the snake. He's always kind of in the background, and I don't want to give him credit because he's a defeated foe from what I know of the gospel, but how much of our suffering can we blame onto him?
Satan is I would say all evil, the actors are human beings.
Yes.
So if you look at every kind of suffering on the planet, it's the actors in the play of life, like on the earth, are human beings. Like you got Hitler, you got
all the bad guys, all the villains.
Also just regular human
Yeah.
beings. People are full of evil, hate, road rage.
Sure.
All the evil that happens is the actors are us. But the world is permeated with demonic forces that are like studying us continuously to push
like
our button.
watching us.
Yeah, studying, watching you, knowing how you feel, how you look, what you say, and using all of those words against you. So if you ever just imagine when you say something out loud somewhere, and then it brings back to your memory.
Yes.
So that's you and the enemy combining together to make a power punch where the sin is almost irresistible.
Can he, because here it talks about steal, kill, and destroy, like he is looking to do those things. Can he send somebody cancer or, autoimmune, like are diseases his creation? Because if nothing bad comes from God, then it must come from...
Well, that's a big topic because it has to do with health, but cancer rates are like 1 in 2 now.
Yeah.
So that's not
ridiculous.
That's caused by
the world,
man.
you'd say. Yeah.
Our toxins and the things we eat, and
so we can't blame everything on him.
No, but it's in partnership with the enemy that wants to destroy our lives.
Of course.
Like smoking. I smoked for a long time.
Yeah.
Why did I do that? Stupidity.
Yeah.
Peer pressure. And then I got addicted. It took a miracle of God for me to quit because I was a chain smoker. So I quit in one day. Where I couldn't quit in a year. I almost lost my girlfriend because of that. And then I quit in one day.
That's really good. That's powerful.
Like why are we drinking? Why are there toxins? Why? You just find it everywhere now because the level of disease rate is high. The level of obesity in America and North America is so high.
It's skyrocketing too. It keeps going up.
Kind of food that we're eating. That's us, but then that's us. That's our independence.
So it is sort of Satan.
Yeah, but then Satan is using our independence, telling us, like, why don't you just make your own food? The non-GMO, like, create your own food.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then we find out, those are not good for you.
Such a cool point of view.
Yeah, why don't you know what? Look at that grandfather who smoked till 80. Why don't you smoke?
Wow.
You know what? One drink is not going to kill you, and then you drink 2 drinks, and then you're having like 3-4 drinks every night.
So it's not so black and white. It's kind of gray.
Yeah, and it's just Satan is the ultimate puppet master controlling a lot of these evil players in the world, especially when you get to the higher level, higher stratospheres of political and political governance. But they're submitting to something.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're either submitting directly to a lie or they're submitting directly to the evil one. So when you go to the developing world in Africa, there's people who crave power and they're into witchcraft. They're submitting directly to the evil one.
That's an obvious one,
because
right?
they have power.
That's black magic,
Yeah, but the power of God is so much greater than the power of Satan. But then in North America, it's less, well, I don't know, in our world, like black magic is rising.
Really?
People are like more open to it now.
Yeah.
But Satan is more hidden, it's more indirect. And it's more, I think the greatest evil is the idea of humanism.
Yes.
where we elevate human like potential to the highest level. And so Satan is telling us, hey man, why don't you create like nuclear fission, and then you can create your own energy. And then
We're gods.
And then we created a nuclear bomb. Who
Yeah.
did that? Satan? No, we did. But
There was a
who planted
push,
all these ideas?
like Adam and Eve.
Yes. Who planted all these ideas? But it was fueling our desire to be independent. It's always self-sufficiency, independence, power. Like that's the temptation.
It's our flesh, right?
Well, the three
That's already
temptations
wanting
that
to-
Jesus faced in the desert. See, Jesus went through everything that Adam and Eve went through, but he passed.
Yeah.
That's why he's the second Adam. He said, create your own bread.
I didn't even think about it like that.
Why do you need to rely on God? You're God. You can make your own bread. That is what human beings do all the time. Just make your own food. Work hard and you make your own money. You don't need God.
Yes.
You don't need church. You know what? Worship. If you just worship me, if you just submit
I'll
to
give
me,
you the whole world.
you can have this power. You can take a shortcut. Like I don't have to go through any suffering. I can just, you know what? I bet you there's people out there, if Satan said, you just worship this kind of religion and you'll have no suffering, they'll jump to that.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how cults start.
Yeah. Pastor Steve, you have given me so much to think about. Like all the ideas that you've put out there, I've never heard before. I'm sure a lot of the viewers have never heard of that in that context. I want to thank you for enlightening me and all of our viewers on this subject of suffering. I got some questions answered for sure, especially about Job. I want to thank you for being here and thank you for spending time. He talked about so many things, and I'll see you in the after talk where I'll summarize everything.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And just know that there's so much deeper theologians who are way smarter than me that can extrapolate
You know what, though?
truth from Job.
For someone like me who's not a theologian and not philosophical at all, when I watch those guys, it just goes over my head, but you've put it in such a way where I caught it too, like I could understand it.
Yeah,
and
so maybe
fathom
next
and
time we can
grasp
talk
it.
about God's sovereignty, the
Yes.
difference between God's sovereignty
you'll
and providence, and then predeterminism. Those are different things.
Yes, you'll definitely come back. Thank you, Pastor Steve. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much. Have a good one, guys. Be blessed. Hey friends, welcome to our new channel. We really love and we appreciate all of your support. Help us out and take a minute of your time to like, subscribe, share with your friends, and comment below. I'd love to hear your feedback. And maybe you'd have a miracle of your own to tell us about. Remember to hit the bell too, so that you'll get notified every time we drop a new miracle. Again, thank you, thank you, thank you. We are so grateful for your help. Hang out with me for the after talk where I'll share my thoughts about this miracle. Okay, so props to Pastor Steve for not shying away from this question and tackling it head on. This question, huge question of suffering. What a rebel. I'm so proud he's my pastor now. See you Sunday, Pastor Steve. This question, as I'm sure it has plagued many of you, has plagued me for all my life. I really envied people who never asked these questions. I really did. I wanted to have blind faith because it was so joyful looking. It was ignorance is bliss, right? And everyone told me, by the way, that I will never get an answer to this suffering question. But 3 years ago, I was so bold with God. I was like, look, God, I don't know if I believe in you right now, but if you want me as a follower, like so self-important, who am I? But anyways, I said, if you want me as a Christian and go along with all these people that drank the Kool-Aid, I'm one of them now, you're going to have to answer me this question, and not in that, I don't know, philosopher's language that's going to leave me depressed, confused, and having an existential crisis. So the answer actually came out of my own mouth, to my surprise. When I was talking to my cousin, it's a long story and I won't go into it, but the conversation went something like, my cousin was saying, well, God is good. God is God and he holds your eternity in his hands. So if he says jump, then you jump. And I was like, screw that. I'm not doing that. What kind of dictator is this who dangles, eternity in front of you and says, hey, if you don't jump this high, you're going to hell? But the conversation actually ended up with me saying, no, that's not the God of the Bible. He is love. He's what Jesus is. He is Prince of Peace. And all these things, which honestly, I couldn't even believe were coming out of my mouth back then, considering how much I resented God. But the answer lies, like Pastor Steve said, in Genesis. So he created the perfect world, right? Adam and Eve, no disease, no suffering, no nothing, but free will existed. And our ancestors made some stupid choices, and now the world is where it is. Also, Pastor Steve asked the why. Why did I get cancer? And it was such a fresh new take on it. It wasn't God. He didn't say, well, God, maybe is a mystery. Maybe this was used so I could get closer to him. Suffering makes people run to God, whatever else I heard in the past. He actually blamed himself. Oh my goodness. Finally, someone with some responsibility. He was like, I ate junk. He said he ate all this junk in his 20s. I mean, we've all eaten junk, right? And we all know that some fast food fries, which I won't name who because we can't afford a lawsuit right now, but their fries never go bad, like ever. Not a single mold will live on this fry for months. So what about the food we're all eating? What about all the stupid stuff we've ever done or someone else's stupid mistakes affecting us? Hello, it's free will. Someone can actually come up to you and hurt you if they wanted to. It's that verse about sowing and reaping, right? So was it God's will to make you sick? No. He doesn't need you to have cancer so that you can reach someone in that cancer ward and turn him to Christ. He can literally just send a nurse that's working there instead. Why would he make you suffer? But, okay, I will say this, he will use it. He will use the bad and turn it to good because he figures, hey, maybe you're already there anyways in that cancer ward. Not that he put you there, but why doesn't he put this guy in your path so he can hear all about Jesus, right? So I hope you see the distinction. And the story of Job. Oh my gosh, the amount of times people, including myself, by the way, used this book and ignored every other book, like the Gospels, like accounts of Jesus himself, drives me crazy now. I just wanted to rip out that book back then and create my own Bible, which is how cults are started, by the way, so don't do that. I didn't read it to the end. Also, that's important. I didn't read the book of Job to the end. The beginning and middle was like enough. I was like, that's it. This God is so crazy. He just let Satan walk into heaven, stroll in there like they're besties, and then he says, okay, do it. Do whatever you want to my beloved creation. I just checked out. But I miss where God actually had a conversation with Job and was like, look, you don't know anything. He was saying, where were you when I created this and all that stuff? I think he was telling Job that from the beginning, man fell. And yet Job's point of view, like all of ours, was so minute, right? He saw it of this like little pinhole. But like Steve said, God saw it as a whole, the whole time-space continuum. Is that a real word? I feel like that's from Marvel. Anyways, Job's friends were wrong too, he says. It wasn't punishment at all these bad things that happened to Job. And then God blesses him with so much more. So now I take the book of Job, I take it as God saying, no matter what Satan throws at you and takes from you, I will reward you double. Just keep looking at me and not the storm. And no, he's not saying I'm going to reward you in heaven because Job was still on earth when he was blessed with more, remember? But what did you think about Pastor Steve? Like what he said, that Job was maybe a real person, but it was maybe based off of him and it was written like Shakespeare. That was such a crazy idea to me because I've never heard it before. I've asked like a million people about the book of Job and nobody has brought that up. But that would make so much sense, right? Like I'm starting to kind of do a little research, and from what little I've gathered, there's actually some merit to the book of Job being written based on a real person, but sort of dramatized too. I don't know. What do you guys think? Comment below. I hope this interview honestly answered some of your questions because I know that a lot of people can get stuck on this and it can be a stumbling block to trusting God and having mountain moving faith. Although I will tell you, even if this was answered for me 10 years ago, it's not what would have made me turn to Christ. It was that personal, intimate encounter with him that nobody could talk me out of. I lived it. I'm here to tell you it was real. I encountered a real living Jesus. Do you want to experience the same thing? If you do, please repeat after me. God, I want to surrender my life to you today. I want to encounter a real living God. I am repenting of everything I've done that is not of you.